let's say a company decides that, they actually do want to work upstream because it's just the most reasonable thing for them to do. Um, Back to the IBM example, as you worked for IBM, who we just talked about, was successful in this regard. So you mentioned that things were in place when you joined the company. Can you share anything about the practices and the framework that was implemented at IBM to allow people to be able to work upstream in some percentage or 100% of the time? Like, what was the way how IBM managed the upstream investment and involvement?
So IBM they were in the enterprise business, right? They wanted to sell enterprise solutions and robust things like that. They were competing against Sun and Solaris and other Unixes, even AIX. So they had a list of things that for their hardware that they wanted to have work better, right? They had a list based on the marketing reports of other companies, what they supposedly did that Linux didn't do. So they had their open source team. They said, here's the list of things to work on. And then they would manage and parse them out and work on that. And then if the feature got accepted upstream, but not by that developer, rejigger how they do their things like that. Or, oh, look, this subsystem isn't being maintained and needs some help because it's not working well for us. Let's go throw an engineer on that and have them do that. Let's work on this file system to solve this problem and not. They had a really well-defined list of things that they wanted to do. So that's what you need to come in with. It'd be your list of, here's our hardware, and here's what we want to need to support going forward. Here's our new device that we're going to look at. I mean, you look at the ARM chips and the RISC-V chip vendors. They need to get those chips working and get that code upstream. There's a good list. Have those developers work on that, get the stuff upstream, work well on that. IBM, Intel does that really well. Famously, Intel asked us to rip code out once for a chip. We're like, we don't take code out we're not going to break users. Like, no. Sorry, that chip never shipped. So Intel had the code written, reviewed, accepted, in a release before before the chip even shipped, and then they canceled the product, so we had to rip it out, which is fine. We're glad to do that, but they were that far ahead of the game, right? So they had a good pipeline, and they knew what they're going. Chip pipelines are 6 years old, or 6 years deep, right? These companies know what's coming. They know how to plan this type of stuff. Your hardware life cycle is a year. You know what you need to do. Fit it into the life cycle. I have a whole talk on how to fit this into your life cycle at the proper time. You can give us code without working hardware. I don't care, as long as it doesn't break my hardware. It's not like you need to have something that it runs on. You can give it to us with fake names, right? Code names all the time. Famously, IBM taped out a new chip and brought it up on a standard kernel because all the code had already been merged under a different name of something else, and nobody knew that, and it just worked on their brand new chip. IBM did a really good job with that. So IBM management had a list of things to do, right? So that's all you need to do. You're trying to solve a problem for you. It wasn't that you go work in the upstream community 100% of your time to do whatever you want to do. It's like, here's the task we want to do. And if you're a maintainer, okay, you're maintaining that, and that's good for us as well. When I worked at SUSE in Novell, I ended up managing the kernel team after a while. We had a requirement at the end of the year, you had to work X percentage of time upstream, at least 20% of your time. We have a product, we have all this other stuff. 20% of your time has to be upstream. And if your code if you don't have that requirement of your employees, they're not going to do the stuff because if they're getting reviewed at time. Famously, we have some core kernel maintainers that work for companies that part of their day job, no upstream work is allowed, right? Is not part of their end of the year review. These are core people, and I don't know why they like working on that stuff, but that's their business. But their job is not, they can squeak out some time on their own. It's not part of their day job, and that's sad to me as far as that. And we have a whole our company ecosystem on how sustainable maintainership is, from level 0 of you're not allowed to work on the kernel at all to level 5 where you let them do whatever you want to do. And we publish that, and you can grade your company on that list right there. But it depends. But if you are a manager, just say, hey, X number amount of time you have to work upstream. Android, I'll call it Android kernel team again, doing a good job. They made the requirement, if you're going to work on these new features for Android, which they knew they needed to do, you do it upstream first, and then we'll backport it to our kernels. And it's much easier to do it that way. And they told their engineers, this is your job. And some engineers, to their credit said, I don't really want to do that. So they found jobs working on something else.
Different work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different work. And they wanted to go, some of them went to go work on different operating systems, which is fine. But so management said this, you have to have something, you have to have the management buy-in order to work upstream. Because the managers knew that would save them money and time, and Android kernel team is very, very tiny, and they're doing really good stuff because of that. So we have lots of public examples of this working well. Why people don't take advantage of that, I don't know.
So like to confirm, like what models that you saw or had, they are rather saying that this is the minimum amount of time that you need to work upstream. Also having this part of yearly reviews and maybe even bonus processes and whatever else corporate organizations have, as opposed to saying that you're maybe allowed to work 20% or 40% max. So it was rather the minimum that they needed to hit.
Yeah, that's what we did at SUSE. We did that. It was a minimum, yeah. And you could do more. You still had to. We had other requirements that you had to do as well. But so if you wanted to do this type of stuff, you would do that. And I'm pretty sure everybody did at least more than 20% of their time in the community. But this is also, we relied on that, and those were now the subdomain experts in that part, so they could provide help and support to the customers in that area. So if somebody had a USB bug, because I worked upstream in USB subsystem, I knew how to solve it easier. And I could also send that bug to the community, and I knew the right people to talk to help make it fix it easier as well, because this is a real problem. So it's good. It's good for a company to do that, and because then they're domain expert for that, and they can help. Linux is going to stay the same today, but it will change based on what people contribute, right? If you think it's working perfect, wonderful. If you want to see things change, you need to get involved. So as a company, if you rely on Linux, you want to make sure it evolves in a way that's going to still work for you, right? So become part of that process. Otherwise, it might evolve in a way that isn't going to work for you, which wouldn't be a good idea. So just be part of that process and realize what's coming. You can see what's going to happen next. You can get a heads up for, my product that I'm going to be ship in 3 years. Oh, look, this stuff that's coming down the pipe, maybe if I redo this in a different way, or we can take advantage of this, or we can do this other thing this way. We can just it's a good feedback loop and whatnot. Hardware engineers have the same thing. They see process changes that are happening over time for companies, present to them about what things they could do differently. It's the same idea as us. So we're not unique that way. We just happen to do our stuff in the open.
Yeah, it's just kind of one thing that I often see as kind of a head scratcher for companies in terms of what is that framework that would work in terms of how people split their time between open source project and their downstream product, and how to figure those things out and how not to have it as a conflict. And I think sometimes there is the conception that, if a person works upstream, then they will have to work upstream 100%. They absolutely don't have to do that.
We have almost no people that do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have people that do that. Yeah, it's just not. I'll send you a link. You can put on the thing that shows our grade of company based on how you work with the open source community. That it's been published for a couple of years. Ted So wrote it. Did a really good job. But it's also unique and special to your special issues. I've worked for different companies, and we all treated that differently because we were creating different things and working on different things. But we knew that you needed to rely on that and do it some way, right? Because it was important. So there's no one answer fits all, but you have to have buy-in, and you have to be something that is at the end of the year something that the employee has to do in order to do that, or otherwise they're just not going to do that. And rightfully so. If you're not going to grade me on my open source,
it's what they're incented for. Yeah,
they're incentives. Yes, that's the right word. Yeah.
But for me, that's why it is really important that it's senior leadership and then those line managers who have that appreciation. And that's often the difficulty, is the transition from the way companies have done things in the past when things were all proprietary and internal, to when you're really relying on those platforms evolving to the best benefit for your application as you need it next year and the year before and the year after and so forth. Right. So it's an investing in the future, where when you haven't done it before, you don't know what that return on investment is going to be, because this working upstream, what actually, what's the benefit? What am I going to get out of that? Because it's not really known. Until it is known, then it's an easy thing to do. But it's that transition for those managers I often see as one of the problems in getting there.
Yeah, but this isn't new. We've been doing this for 25 years in companies. I mean, this isn't a new thing. It's been around for longer now.